The first time I walked into a Unitarian Universalist church, I felt like I belonged. Eventually. Because the First Unitarian Church in Chicago is not a typical UU church. It is a Gothic cathedral with spires and chandeliers and a pipe organ. And because it's located near the University of Chicago, which has all these gray buildings with foreboding gargoyles and arched windows. And so this was not the type of place that I felt at home. This was a foreboding place. Daunting, even haunting. Because whenever I go to a new church, I kind of sneak around and find little crevices. I went down to the basement and saw the crypts. This was a medieval cathedral. But high in the vaulted arch at the front of the cathedral was a little niche that contained nothing. No statue. And a little note in the bulletin said, "We do not tell you which God or which idea to put up at the center of our altar. Bring your own and share it with others." And then I knew I could make a home here. This is a place that I could belong. Whenever I'm driving along a country road and I see a church and it has a sign that says, "All are welcome," I'm tempted to knock on the door and say, "Are gay people welcome? Are women who want to be priests or ministers welcome? Are divorcees, single parents? Can I wear my shorts and Hawaiian shirt? Is your building handicap accessible? Are atheists and pagans welcome?" I think every church likes the idea of proclaiming itself welcoming, telling people to make themselves at home, but they put up barriers. Physical barriers, social barriers, and dogmatic barriers. Barriers that tell people, you don't belong. Don't make yourself at home here. Most say you are welcome if you are willing to be just like us. Now that happens, I imagine, even a little here in New Bern, but we try to keep it at a minimum. And I heard the phrase of people saying, "Well, I found a like-minded community," which is generally true. But if you attend the book discussion on Thursday morning, you will find that it's not totally true. I heard them arguing about civility, and so I had to sit in this week. We do not assume that people are broken and need to be fixed. We do not believe that anyone is tainted with original sin. You do not have to dress in your Sunday best, wear your comfortable shoes, and walk right in. Throughout my career, especially when I was younger and looked 12 during my 30s, it was very important to me to be in a suit and tie just to show that there might be some accoutrements of authority there. And this is the first place that ever objected to me wearing a tie. I think you're the first people to kind of see my inner self and know that that's not me. There are three factors that contribute to this welcoming attitude, and it's in our history. We are governed democratically. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and we offer people-centered worship. Many faith traditions are authoritarian. A priest, a guru, or a shaman is believed to have a special access to a higher power. Or other traditions put an ultimate power in a scripture. It is written. People are asked to take their orders from on high. In contrast, our tradition rules from the bottom up. In church terms, this is known as congregational polity. The voices of the people determine the policy of the congregation, and the congregation determines with other congregations the policies of the denomination. And this tradition dates back to our ancestors on the Mayflower. Away from the King of England, they had the Puritans, the separatists, and they also had the people who were just kind of workers that they just knew how to build a cabin that came along. And so on the boat before they hit the shore, they made the Mayflower Compact. And it said, laws and ordinance and acts and officers from time to time shall be thought to meet and convenient for the general order of the colony. And these 17th century pilgrims evolved into 18th century Congregationalists. And by the early 19th century, there was a theological split, and the Plymouth congregation became Unitarians. And even this theological controversy was a reflection on the views of humanity. Trinitarians believed that Jesus was the divine coming down to become human. Unitarians believed that Jesus was human, reaching up and becoming divine. And rather than worshiping a risen Christ, Unitarians followed the example of a human Jesus, hoping to rise themselves and lift themselves up. Believing in the potential of humanity, we trust people to make choices about a congregation. In 1985, the Unitarian Universalist Association voted to be guided by 7 principles. This was not something that came down from a mountain. This was something that people got together and voted on. And the first principle is that we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And this is one of the main reasons that each of you belong here. You do not have to pretend to be perfect. If you're a visitor, you will soon find out that none of us are perfect, and we'll probably discover the same about you. But despite our flaws, we all have inherent worth and dignity, and that we need to respect each other. And this principle has its roots in our Universalist history. And this is a symbol here of the Unitarians and the Universalists who came together in 1961. And the Universalist symbol is the circle with the cross a little bit to the side, recognizing that they were a Christian denomination, but because of their interpretation of Christianity, that everyone was saved. That meant everyone who was welcome in the congregations, regardless of belief. Universalists said there were no throwaway people. Everyone is lovable. Everyone is worth saving. Our job is not to judge who is good or bad. Our job is to become better ourselves and help one another become better. Gordon McKeeman wrote, Universalists believe that all of us are going to end up together in heaven, so we might as well learn how to get along with each other now. Make yourself at home. Come as you are. Be yourself in fellowship. Honor your inherent worth and dignity. And this is the starting point that allows you to honor the worth and dignity of others. And this creates a sense of belonging for all. Because religion based on shame causes people to hide their faults. And when we hide our faults, it's impossible for us to recognize them and improve. We are a religion based on hope. In the 20th century, some Unitarians and Universalists focused solely on human goodness. In 1933, they signed the Humanist Manifesto, which said in part, "Religious humanism considers the realization of the human personality to be the end of," 1933, "man's life, and it seeks its development and fulfillment in the here and now." And it says also, "It follows that there will be no uniquely religious emotions and attitudes of the kind hitherto associated with the belief in the supernatural." They affirmed it is just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. And that is why, as a church, we have the only atheists who go to church. You might have to explain that to your family, but just tell them it's a really cool place. And historically, Unitarian Universalism has been about the expansion of human rights. In 1776, Thomas Jefferson wrote about the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That same year, Unitarian Benjamin Franklin and Universalist Benjamin Rush formed an anti-slavery society. Unitarian Susan B. Anthony fought for women's rights. Unitarian Mary White Ovington helped found the NAACP. Unitarian and secular Jew Roger Baldwin founded the ACLU. And the Universalist Clarence Skinner helped found Planned Parenthood, expanding reproductive rights. UU James Reeb was martyred in the Civil Rights March in Selma. And in 2004, UU President William Sinkford, who was our first African American president of our denomination, officiated at the first legal gay marriages in America. Unitarian Universalists have a long history of defending your right to be who you are, inviting you to make yourself at home here. We celebrate all of this in a people-centered worship service. When I've traveled to UU fellowships and churches and societies and congregations, we can't even agree on anything. I have noticed a certain informalism, even in the Gothic surroundings of First Church in Chicago. The people still are informal. And this informality is not just laziness or sloppiness. It just has roots in honoring the human experience. Growing up, I seldom saw people laugh in church. Behavior was strictly regulated. Be quiet, sit, and stand on cue. Here, when we ask people to stand, we say, if you are able, or in body or spirit, because we recognize that each of us have different abilities. The main thing is we want everyone to be included. And we laugh. I hear laughter in our services, spontaneous outbursts of joy. I've seen tears as we share joys and sorrows. We allow for the authentic experience because it is part of the human experience. Some traditions have a pastoral prayer where the pastor asks God to help the people. We have joys and sorrows where we are encouraged to help one another. In some traditions, the minister is the only one who preaches from the pulpit. But even in UU congregations that have a full-time minister, usually one Sunday a month is held open to hear other voices. And people rise and express their opinions. All religions and philosophies are appropriate topics for a Sunday service because they are part of the human experience. And our principle for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, each of us is free to pursue our unique spiritual path. But we vow to be responsible to one another, defending another one's freedom as if it were our own. We're less concerned about what you believe and more concerned with how you believe. Does your belief in God help you love other people? Or does your atheism help you recognize your common humanity? This is how you believe, and your philosophy is probably working for you and others. On the other hand, if your faith makes you feel self-righteous, or if your skepticism makes you feel intellectually superior and excludes others, then your faith is probably not working for you or humanity. Make yourself at home. You belong. You are lovable and you deserve love. If you think you are a wretch or an undeserving soul, then it does no good to love your neighbor as yourself. Because I am a wretch, I will treat you like a wretch. If you are self-condemning, all you have to offer is condemnation. Self-flagellation or beating ourselves up only makes us weaker. Instead, we come together in hope. By accepting one another, we encourage spiritual growth. And I think sometimes just the act of accepting one another, when we certainly have some personalities here, and in every congregation I have met, that act of learning about other people has caused a lot of spiritual growth in me. We create a safe place for people to become better people. And we belong by making others feel like they belong. We have a little time, and so I just want to ask two questions. What made you feel like you belonged here? And what do you plan to do to make others feel welcome? And the microphone is on. I'm talking in it so we can get some volume checked. I'm nervous about the speakers, but I think we'll do okay.
Good morning. I'm Betty Todd. We belong to a large Christian church up north before we moved down here. I never felt like I belonged there. I didn't agree with the beliefs, all of the beliefs that were being thrown at me and expected to believe. And so when we came down here, I was very interested in Unitarianism. And we came here and we felt so welcomed. And this became our church home. And I agree with the beliefs here because it's basically what you want to believe. There's nothing forced upon you. You're not told what you need to believe or what you don't need to believe. You have your own spiritual growth, and that's why I love it here.
soon after we came here, maybe it was 2009 or 2010, there was an outrageous speaker. This was not the time when people left, for those of you who remember those days, but it was the time before then, and there were questions afterwards, and it was the polite Southern way that questions were asked that made me feel so at home, that people could honor that speaker and ask polite questions that made the speaker and all of us examine one another in a caring way.
I've lived in New Bern for about 5 years, and I came here trying to find a church that was as vibrant and fulfilling as my church in Albuquerque. It was an Episcopal church. I searched for a long time. I didn't find anything. And most of my friends actually are Unitarian, and several of my family members. And I really resisted for a long time. So finally I came, and it really was the first time that I had felt welcomed. And I said, all right, I like the community, and so I kept coming, and I find that the variety of things that are offered here really has met my needs, and also I meet them in other ways with other things at churches or groups. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Hi. In order to tell you what this place means to me, I have to share a little bit about my childhood. And I may get a little emotional, so forgive me. But this is not a story I tell everybody. But as a child, my two brothers and myself were abused and neglected and unloved. And my younger brother and I used to go to a library, which was just round the corner from where we lived. We spent many, many hours there just feeling totally free and safe and happy, and nobody was yelling at us or abusing us. And it was just a very safe place for us. When I came into this building, and I still get that same feeling like I did when we were in that library as children. It's a safe place for me. I feel accepted and loved, and I have such gratitude that I found this UU. It's a great family to belong to, and I'm just very grateful.
Ed and I were married by a Unitarian minister in Northern California, Arcata, and Humboldt County. When we met in '82, we started going to that church, very small little country church, but it was so open-minded. It was just almost like going to an experiment. And we were married by that minister. And then we moved to D.C. and tried going to the Unitarian church there. But it was so big and it was so lily white, we didn't feel like it was that comfortable for us, so we stopped going. But before we moved here, almost 8 years ago, it'll be 8 years the week before Thanksgiving. Actually, before that, we would come and visit and come to this church and always felt very welcome. But before we even decided to move to New Bern, Ed said, well, if there's a Unitarian church, that's a sign we can move here. And there was, thank God.
I guess this is the talkative side of the room.
Hi, I'm Bob Metby. It's an interesting story. We had been coming here to New Bern for probably 16 years before we finally bought. We did buy a house and looked for a long time for a church. And I wasn't convinced of any church. But what did it for me is quite personal, because I was diagnosed with a couple problems, and they were difficult. So I had shared it with a couple people here. I hadn't even shared it with my own children. Eileen was up with one of her daughters having a baby, and that sharing meant a lot to me because the people were open, they communicated with me. I was put on leave of absence for the Bank of America, which I managed money for because of my health issue. So it was difficult. So the people I shared it with, I thank you. And sorry.
Hi, I'm Cindy Chesley. We've been in New Bern as of last week for 6 years. Both my husband and I were born Southern, and we escaped to Colorado for 45 years. And the one demand my grandmother made when we moved to Colorado was, you must join the Methodist Church. Well, we didn't. And so I had about 45 years of no church experience, and that was just fine with me. And then we decided to move to New Bern, no snow, and we didn't know the East Coast, but we knew the South, so we came. And because of the Hunters, they belonged to this church, and we came, and it was just instant home. It was absolutely wonderful. And a year after that, Charlie was diagnosed with melanoma stage 4 in December 2014. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. I could not have made it through these last 5 years without you. It was so wonderful to have an anchor, a home, and friends. And Charlie and I are pretty isolated right now, but we know that you're here, and if we need help or just a hug or anything, you're here. And I love the messages from everyone in this church. Thank you.
My name is John, and it's very difficult for me to speak sometimes. But the first day that I drove by and saw the rainbow flag, that's when I knew that there was a place for me also, that it was going to be a welcoming congregation, and that everybody was going to be friendly. And they didn't care who you were. They cared more about you being here. Giving back, I think the best thing I have done is to tell my neighbors how wonderful this church was. And as a result, my next door neighbor comes every week now, and my neighbors from the church that I got them involved, they love it. And that's giving back, is telling your neighbors about how wonderful this place is, bringing them here so that they can feel the joy just like every one of you have.
I think that's very important, to not keep this place a secret and let people know how wonderful we are.
Thank you, Charlie. I think I've told you all before that my roots in theology are Christian roots, and I'm still a Christian, or at least that's what I call myself. In my journey, I've spent some time in books that are called systematic theology. And as I go down through all the subjects, I take a minority position on probably every single one of them. So I'm probably the most unorthodox Christian on earth. And Charlie mentioned that when you go into a regular denomination, you're usually expected to, you're quote, welcome. But you're welcome long enough to conform. And if you fail to conform, you become unwelcome. And that's one of the things I found whenever I walked in this door. You really don't care too much what I believe, but you care about the results of what I believe. And that is that I love people. I want people to be taken care of. And I think that's the same thing that all of you want for me. So I feel welcome. And I thank you.
I'm Gloria Berg, and I just want to say that I felt welcome the minute I walked in the door, and Leslie gave me a ride, and Sam and Barbara helped me, and you all have been so welcome to me. And then secondly, I would say to belong. Charlie, you have made it just wonderful. You are absolutely the best. And the explanations today were absolutely marvelous. Thank you.
Let us join, lifting ourselves in body and or spirit, to sing hymn 360.